Hi everyone, today we're going to be learning about the first derivative and how it relates to the function. But more specifically, we're going to be focusing on the graph of f prime of x and how it relates to the graph of f of x.
So the first derivative test is used to identify extrema, increasing or decreasing intervals, and critical points. Extrema occurs when the graph of f prime of x goes from below the x-axis to above the x-axis, and vice versa, or when it goes from positive to negative, and vice versa. So to start off, we're going to be looking at our graph, which is f prime of x. Remember to always look at which graph you are given. We're going to start off at the far left. So here we'll see that f prime of x is above the x-axis and then changes to below the x-axis at -1, which means we have a maximum occurring at x is equal to -1. Continuing on, we see that f prime of x goes from below the x-axis to above the x-axis at 1, which means we have a minimum occurring at that point. And lastly, right here it goes from positive to negative, which means we have another maximum occurring at that point. So now let's look at our increasing and decreasing intervals. F of x is increasing when f prime of x is greater than 0, or when it's positive / above the x-axis. F of x is decreasing when f prime of x is less than 0 / negative or below the x-axis. We are given the same graph of f prime of x as the previous question. First, let's start off by identifying where f prime of x is greater than 0. So from -2 to -1, we see that it is above the x-axis. Can't say the same thing for here, but here we can, which means our intervals are increasing from -2 to -1 and 1 to 3. Now, at this point, f prime of x is less than 0, which means our intervals are decreasing at -1 to 1. Now let's look at our critical points. Critical points are used to identify possible extrema, and they occur where f prime of x is equal to 0 or undefined. If you are given an equation, it is best to use calculus, which means you would take the first derivative, set it equal to 0, and use your sign chart to check those points. But what happens when you're given the graph of f of x? Well, remember that critical points occur where f prime of x is equal to 0 undefined. So what does that mean? That means when f prime of x is equal to 0, f of x has a slope of a tangent line equal to 0. When f prime of x is undefined, that means f of x is a non-differentiable point. Looking at this graph, we see that at this point, -0.5, we have a slope of a tangent line that is 0. And then at 5, we have a non-differentiable point, which is a cusp. So that means we have critical points occurring at x equals -0.5 and 5. And that's it. Thank you.